Alrighty, y'all, what are we getting into today? We're talking about Don't Worry, Darling. Alright, this sounds familiar. Did something happen over the weekend? I feel like I've heard of this movie before, huh? What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into my spoiler-free thoughts on Don't Worry, Darling. A huge thank you to Warner Brothers for giving me the chance to watch this early for review. Now, the movie does hit theaters officially September 23rd, so you got a little ways to go, but I'm excited to talk about this film, both good things and some things that didn't work very well. But as you know, the drama surrounding this movie has been big, but putting all that drama aside, we're going to focus on the film, and I'm going to tell you whether it's worth your time or not. If you don't know much about the movie, it's directed by Olivia Wilde. This is her second film after Booksmart, and it's starring Florence Pugh, Harry Styles, Chris Pine, and Gemma Chan. And of course, I mentioned a spoiler-free review, so I can't get into any plot details, and you're going to want to go into this knowing as little as possible because it does help the overall experience. So let's go ahead and dive into what Don't Worry, Darling is about. The story surrounds Alice and Jack, a couple madly in love with one another, until one day, Alice begins to notice there's something off with this world they're in, and that there is much more than meets the eye. If that sounds intriguing, trust me, the premise of the film actually is pretty darn effective. Now, before we get into my positives, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell, and hit the thumbs up button for more reviews just like this. It's going to be a busy weekend with D23 Expo, and I'm sure a lot of different trailers and announcements that we'll cover right here on the channel. And guys, get loud in the comments below and let me know which performance was your favorite. That's a good question to ask because I have one, and it's probably the one you're already thinking of. Alrighty, y'all, so let's get into the positives, but I do have one question for you. Who is one of the best actors of our generation, and why is it Florence Pugh? She is otherworldly in this movie. This is probably my favorite performance of the year so far, and her strongest performance yet, and that's saying a lot because I loved her in Little Women, but here I enjoyed seeing the film through her eyes. There was this slow descent into madness with her character Alice, and it is just incredible to witness. You could feel the horror in her eyes. She added so much depth to this movie on an emotional layer as well. She single-handedly captivated me in scenes where she's either completely upset, or you can tell she's getting very, well, intimate in a way with Jack, and not in the way you're thinking. However, that does happen. I'm just saying, there's moments where you can tell they're just two people in a room and they're completely vulnerable with one another, and I really loved that about her performance, and to me, she sold every scene. I mean, there were moments where, yes, she was arguing with Harry Styles' character, Jack, and there's a lot of back and forth, there's tension, but she was the one who sold everything for me. But Florence Pugh's name isn't the only superstar among this cast. I really enjoyed a lot of our supporting actors and performances as well, and this group is led by Chris Pine. Chris Pine plays the mysterious Dr. Jack, who is married to Shelley. I really loved actually both Gemma Chan, who plays Shelley, and Chris Pine together, but you can tell that both of them were just so locked into the role. It's almost like they transformed into these characters, which is kind of cool, and I really loved what Chris Pine did with the role because this is the first time, at least in recent memory, that I can go ahead and tell you that I was scared of Chris Pine in the movie. His monologue in the beginning was completely enthralling, and then you have his co-star, of course, Gemma Chan. She was solid, but they really did underuse her here. I'm actually pretty disappointed about that because every time she's on screen, she does steal the show, and she doesn't have those moments very often. Maybe 2 times, at least that I can remember, that I could say, oh man, like she is crushing it right now, and I'm glad they're giving her a spotlight, but they don't do that very often. So individually, both of these actors have really good moments here, but together they don't have as much of an impact, and I think that's mainly due to what the script is calling for, but I will tell you that they both deliver some great performances, but they're also not alone. I really loved what Kiki Layne did with the character of Margaret. First of all, Kiki Layne is an incredible actor anyway, but this was just chilling. She makes the best of her on-screen opportunities, and she does get a decent amount of screen time, especially in the middle of the film, but I was feeling this performance, and I was actually kind of sad for this character. I won't tell you why, but man, it was really interesting to kind of get into the mind of Margaret and understand more of this character, and Kiki Layne expressed a lot of these horrific mannerisms very well. Boy, there was a scene that just had my breath on pause. I was so into this moment, and it was due in large part to Kiki Layne's acting. And then rounding out the standouts among our supporting cast, it is Olivia Wilde herself as this character named Bunny, another neighbor of Alice and Jack's. When you watch this movie, if you're thinking, why is Olivia Wilde so on board with everything that's going on around her? Trust me, there's a reason for it, but this character that she plays is almost scary to a degree, but I think Olivia Wilde sells the performance very well, and she is overall a very solid actor anyway, and she had a lot of the comedic relief in this movie too. I laughed, maybe I shouldn't have laughed, but there were some lines that just made me laugh, and I really enjoyed her performance. But speaking of Olivia Wilde, let's talk about her direction in this movie, because it is so much stronger here than it was in Booksmart. Now, I'm one of the critics who did not enjoy Booksmart. I thought it was a little overhyped and overvalued. The film is a decent coming-of-age tale, but it doesn't do anything to leave a lasting memory and impression. Now, for Don't Worry Darling, there are plenty of elements here that will stick with me, and if anything, the movie's grown on me since I saw it at our press screening. What she does in the director's chair is just much more sharp and focused and purposeful. I just love what Olivia Wilde did with this idea in the film, and there are so many themes that this movie speaks to, including some commentary on society and how men treat women. That I appreciated, because honestly, I do love when movies can, in a smart way, commentate on society and societal values and norms and things like that. So Don't Worry Darling does a pretty good job at that under the surface. And on a technical front, there were so many creepy visuals, and also this score was really unsettling by John Powell. So there are very quick glimpses into the mind of Alice as this movie begins, and sometimes, well, my brain registered it late, and I actually got scared after the fact. So I love the fact that this movie can play with the audience, and it almost makes the audience feel like they're also spiraling downward with Alice. But you can't do all of that and do it effectively without a good bit of music, and man, John Powell composes the heck out of this film. If I'm not mistaken, he was also the composer on Solo, a Star Wars story, a movie that I actually really enjoyed. But man, here there's a great use of music, sounds. You can tell that there's a couple women, maybe a few women in like the studio or the booth, and they're just making noises like up, 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 and it's like really unsettling because of how it's woven into the story and the scenes where we hear this score kind of at its peak. So I loved what they did here, technically speaking, and yeah, this movie really is solid in that regard. So we have a thrilling story, an incredible performance by Florence Pugh, and an idea that I thought really worked well in the movie, but there are some things that just kind of fell off by the wayside for me, and it begins with this negative, you guys. Harry Styles. Now listen, stop, don't get in the comments yet, put the pitchforks down a little bit, but Harry Styles isn't awful in this movie, okay? It's just that Harry Styles is very meh in many moments. This is his first real leading role, and I know he was in Dunkirk, but I think he only maybe had one line, and there wasn't enough for me to judge him there. But here, I can just tell that he's not on the same playing field as his co-stars. And listen, everyone needs to get a start somewhere, so I understand that, but he's not really showing any sort of promise in this movie. If anything, he's holding the film back. Is he serviceable? Yes, but does he actually scale the movie down in moments where the intensity should be here? Absolutely. Whenever there's a moment where Florence Pugh and Harry Styles are getting into a shouting match, you can tell Florence Pugh is all the way bought in and takes it to another level. But then Harry Styles, well, he's not as convincing. Pretty much everyone in this movie, yes, including Nick Kroll, who's barely in the film, continues to run laps around Harry Styles, and it's not always a good thing when one of your two leads can't really hold their own water. And you can tell that Harry Styles didn't get many solo scenes because, well, one, the story, but two, also, they probably knew, okay, we gotta pair him up with Florence Pugh because he's not gonna look too terrible. However, he does come off not really looking the best when he's among his co-stars. I just think Harry Styles maybe wasn't the right casting decision here yet. If Harry Styles would have maybe refined his acting and then stepped into Don't Worry Darling, that would have been great, but I think we needed an actor with a little bit more range for the role of Jack. And then this next negative I have is really not too terrible, but yes guys, the movie is too long for its own good. There's a moment, a dry spell in the middle of this film, right in the thick of things, that I felt the movie wasn't really going anywhere, the story wasn't progressing. We're getting some good scenes of acting, but we're not really getting anything on the story front. Where are we going with this tale? And it wasn't a good question that I had in my head. I wasn't really engaged. If anything, the movie was sort of glossing over my eyes right in the middle of the second act, and I thought, okay guys, let's move the ball forward. And eventually they get there, especially in that thrilling third act. That finale is incredible, but the movie I think needed to be a little bit tighter, and they could have shaved off a little bit of its runtime, and it might have been a more effective movie. But guys, that's all I have for the negatives. Honestly, overall, I like this movie. Don't Worry Darling is so solid. Yes, take the drama, put it aside. This is a film that I was pretty much lost walked into in the first and third acts. I could not squirm from my seat. I didn't, if I had to use the restroom, I wasn't getting up and using it because I didn't want to miss a minute of this acting, but also of where the story was going. Were things predictable? Sort of, until you get to the third act, and then it kind of blows everything out of the water, which is why I was holding back on some story details, because I want you to be just as surprised as I was. And I do like how they ended this film. Some of the critics nearby, they didn't really understand the ending too much, and they were thinking, okay, this is kind of unsatisfying, but for me, it was a completely satisfying ending. And like I mentioned, it always helps whenever Florence Pugh is in a film, and she delivers my favorite performance of the year so far. I love what they do with the character of Alice, and I do like what they have around Florence Pugh as well. Her co-stars are really good. Now, will I say that Harry Styles is really good? No, I would probably put him in the too bad category. I know I'm trying to make noises with my mouth here, guys, but he just doesn't do the greatest job, and that is one of the biggest drawbacks for me, is Harry Styles. So I have to knock the film down a notch, and if I had to rate it out of 5, it probably would get a very strong 3.5 out of 5, and that really is because one of the two leads just, they don't work, and the chemistry isn't always there among both of them. So I kind of wanted more in that regard, and maybe they did miscast Harry Styles in this movie, but for the most part, Don't Worry Darling is a film you don't have to worry about because it is pretty darn good. If you can get out to a theater and see it, I think it's worth it for the sound design and all of the acting on that big screen alone. But if you have to wait at home to watch this, I do think it's best that you stay away from every spoiler because that ending is so surprising. So there you have it, guys. That's my real review of Don't Worry Darling. Again, it hits theaters September 23rd. Let me know in the comments what you think of the film, and hey, if you haven't seen it already, let me know if you're excited for the movie. Which performance are you most excited for? Let's have a conversation about it, guys. And if you haven't, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the big red button below, and hit those thumbs up, guys, because I'm so excited to bring you more content like this. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and it's all because of you. Alrighty, y'all, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And seriously, okay, I'm about to have some nightmares after this movie, maybe.